I'm Randi Hagerman, and I am a developmental and behavioral pediatrician. I'm at the Mind Institute at the University of California at Davis, and this is in Sacramento, California, the capital of California. I have been working in treatment of neurodevelopmental disorders for almost 30 years now. And my main focus is treatment on children with Fragile X syndrome or autism. But I treat a wide variety of children with neurodevelopmental disorders. My research has really focused on molecular aspects, molecular clinical aspects, and how the molecular advances have led to targeted treatments. And I think that Fragile X syndrome has led the way for the development of this new age of targeted treatments that we are in. And this is a very exciting time for people that have been involved with treatment for many years. I really feel that these new targeted treatment trials are reversing the behavioral and the cognitive deficits that we see in individuals with Fragile X syndrome. And there are a number of commonalities across neurodevelopmental disorders. So what we find that is efficacious in Fragile X syndrome also looks in preliminary data to be efficacious in children with autism and perhaps other neurodevelopmental disorders. So I think that we have advanced so much in our understanding of the molecular biology and of the animal models that for a variety of neurodevelopmental disorders that everybody is moving into this new age of treatment. So I think we are taking giant steps towards reversing intellectual disabilities, and this is exciting around the board. This is happening for individuals with Down syndrome, with the initiation of new targeted treatment trials for tuberous sclerosis, neurofibromatosis, but also Fragile X syndrome, and also autism, and many other rare disorders. So it is indeed a very exciting time.
And I understand Fragile X is very, very close, right?
Oh, absolutely. With preliminary results that we've spoken at this conference about. And not only is there one targeted treatment, but there's several. And so this new age is looking at combining targeted treatments with educational interventions. And much of what is developed for educational interventions for individuals with Fragile X syndrome will be very helpful for individuals with Down syndrome and other neurodevelopmental disorders. So
that's incredible news.
Yeah.
Maybe could you just explain Fragile X syndrome to us?
Sure.
I think many people maybe aren't as familiar. Trisomy 21 is popularly understood, but poorly funded.
Yes.
In research, but Fragile X, I understand, is maybe a little more obscure in some people's minds.
Yes, well, Fragile X syndrome occurs in about 1 in 3,600 in the general population, and it's related to an expansion of a CGG, or a trinucleotide repeat, on the front end of the gene. So in individuals affected by the syndrome, the CGG repeat is over 200, so the gene is silenced, and there's a lack of this very crucial protein that is critical for normal development of the brain and synaptic plasticity, or the strength of synapses throughout life. So when you're missing this protein, which is a regulator of translation for many other messages, it causes a tremendous amount of dysregulation in the neuron, and it regulates the messages that are very important for autism too. So it's kind of a key control protein that's missing in Fragile X syndrome. So these individuals have hyperactivity, poor eye contact, unusual hand flapping or hand stereotypies, very poor eye contact, they're often looking away. At least 60% have either autism or autism spectrum disorder. So it's the most common single gene associated with autism. It's the most common inherited cause of mental retardation, in that multiple individuals in a single family will be affected by Fragile X. And also the carriers of Fragile X, Those that have a smaller CGG repeat, they're usually intellectually normal, but the females can develop early ovarian failure. There's a variety of emotional problems that are associated with the premutation, and there's an aging syndrome called the Fragile X-associated tremor ataxia syndrome. It looks like Parkinson's disease, but it can cause tremors after age 50, balance problems, and then cognitive decline or dementia. So the carriers are very common in the general population, about 1 in 130 females, and anywhere from 1 in 250 to 800 males can be a carrier for Fragile X. So the carriers, again, have a variety of neurological problems, and some of the younger children sometimes can have an autism spectrum disorder or learning disabilities or ADHD.
Associated with Fragile X or in addition to Fragile X?
No, associated with the carrier state.
Oh, I see.
So the carriers produce too much messenger RNA. So this is a new mechanism of disease called RNA toxicity that can cause, in some cases, developmental problems. But in most individuals, they're intellectually normal, but it causes this neurological tremor ataxia syndrome, and it also causes the most common cause of early ovarian failure in women. So studying Fragile X syndrome in children has led to understanding a whole variety of aging and endocrinological and reproductive problems in the carriers.
So how close are we really? Are we talking about 5 years, 10 years?
No, these targeted treatments are going on right now. So we'll have the answers as to how helpful they are for behavioral problems or cognitive deficits within the next 2 years. But we are just beginning in this new field of targeted treatments. And for instance, for Fragile X syndrome, it started out with 1 or 2 targeted treatments. Now it's expanding to 3 or 4 or 5 targeted treatments, again hitting different sorts of molecular dysregulation in this disorder, simply because the protein that's missing in Fragile X is a key protein for translation of many other messages. So there's several pathways that are dysregulated. It may take a combination of targeted treatments with intensive intervention to really significantly reverse the cognitive and behavioral problems in Fragile X syndrome, also in autism, and also in many other disorders, including Down syndrome.
So as the research progresses, there are more similarities being found than differences, it seems, and so all of the research that's being done is informing each of these disciplines. I know Jérôme Lejeune did some research himself, I believe, into Fragile X, and it's interesting now that we can see the Lejeune Foundation, which, as we know, was primarily founded to do research into trisomy 21, is now branching out into these other areas, Fragile X, and possibly even autism.
Absolutely, and all of these are interrelated. Jérôme Lejeune very much liked the studies of folic acid and how that could help with some of the features of Fragile X. We're finding that folic acid is a very good antioxidant, and many, many disorders have oxidative stress or mitochondrial problems, including Fragile X, autism. Now we know that Down syndrome also has very significant oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction. So that kind of approach to treatment is turning out to be very important. But we're looking for much more intensive interventions that not only could help the oxidative stress and mitochondrial problems, but can also help the GABA glutamate imbalances, and you know, there are several other pathways that we want to target.
Well, it is an incredibly exciting time.
It is.
Some amazing things going on, and we've heard so much at this conference.
Yeah, absolutely. This conference has emphasized the commonalities of cross disorders, so that someone working with Fragile X or Down syndrome or 22q deletion can listen to advances in any one of these areas and apply it to what they're finding in the syndrome that they are working on. So I think we can all learn from each other.
Well, thank you for your work. I know you've had a long association with the Lejeune Foundation, and that you're actually the president of this international conference. And
yeah, it is.
Principal organizers. So.
It is my pleasure to be the president of this conference. And I also want to say, for us to move forward with targeted treatments, it's going to need the support of people donating to the Lejeune Foundation, because clinical trials are very expensive,
yes.
Very expensive, and we need the support of the people, the families, the parents, the relatives, and all the people that this type of work touches. And actually work in neurodevelopmental disorders is helping us understand about new treatments for aging problems in the general population. You know, cognitive decline and aging is involving some of these same pathways. And so we're really helping, not only when we work in neurodevelopmental disorders, we're helping many aspects of the general population.